Welcome back, everybody. Today in the video we're going to be working on a bunch of random stuff. Transmission cooler, fuel lines, other random stuff I haven't came up with. So stay tuned and we'll get to it. We have a bunch of random parts to put on in this video, so we're going to start with what I got laid out here on the table. So first of all, we got ICT billet coil mounts because we need to relocate our coils. Second, we got transmission cooler lines, transmission fittings, random fittings for this line, and a transmission cooler. So basically everything to set up our transmission cooling system. Next in line, we got fuel lines, 10 AN fuel lines, all kinds of random fittings. And this is PTFE tubing, so we will be E85 compatible. So we're going to go ahead and start putting some of these goodies on, and I think we're going to start with the coil mounts. Well, as you saw right there, I finished assembling the coil packs, and they're all good to go, but I got something more exciting, and I want to put it in right now. Boom! Driveshaft! Yes! Such a big moment for me, finally connecting the rear end to the front end. Let's see if it fits. So just a little information about the driveshaft. It's a steel driveshaft, new spicer U-joints in both sides. They reused this yoke, which I took out of the transmission, but on this end, they got me a new flange that should bolt up to our rear end that's got the bigger 1350 spicer U-joint. So we got 1350 U-joints in both sides. It was high-speed balanced, obviously by Driveshaft company, and should be good to go. Driveshaft is in. Let's go ahead and take a look at the front. Oh, it is freaking perfect. So, let me get my light out so you guys can see a little better. There we go. So I gave this yoke just a little bit of space there so that that rubber doesn't rub against the end of the yoke, and it turned out perfect. Oh, God, so excited. Finally. And you know what? Let's go ahead and see, just out of curiosity, what the angle on our drive shaft is. Hopefully between 5 and 7 degrees, something like that. Take a look here. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 5 degrees. Perfect. Oh God, I'm so excited. I love that. Finally, so one system complete. Drivetrain is done from front to back. The only thing we have to do is, next time we take the motor out, which will be the last time we take the motor out, we have to put the torque converter in the transmission with the flex plate on. Let's get back to what we were doing, which is the coil brackets. ICT billet aluminum coil brackets. They are very nice. Obviously, the ugliest thing on them now is my coils, which don't look too bad, so I'm not too upset. We're also going to be putting on another ICT part here. But, so let me set up the camera here and I'll tell you what I was thinking. So basically I have two spots. The original spot I wanted to mount these coils was right here. I love this spot. It kind of makes use of this weird little piece of metal that I have here. We could run the wires right here along with this pipe that we have here, or even tucked up underneath and plug those in. But you can obviously see what the issue is. We only got about 3 inches to our tire, so God forbid we flex and you know, our tire might hit the coils. The other problem with this is I don't really have any way to mount the spark plug wires that'll be going from here to there, because there's nothing here to mount to. That's obviously going to be an issue anywhere we mount them, because there's nothing here to mount to. So we're going to have to take that into consideration. The front end of this truck is going to be going up a little bit, so we may be able to make this work. But the other option I'm thinking about is here. So if we mount them here, then our 4 spark plug wires could come down and go across like this and underneath. And I think that would look good. We can mount it here on both sides and everything will be happy. So we might be doing that too. I just got to think about it a little more and decide on what we're going to do. A couple other things. So obviously I'd really like to have them mounted here. We could also make a bracket and mount them like this and do it this way, but then we'd have trouble plugging the wires in because the plugs are facing through the back. Now we got plenty of room through the fender. We could possibly drill some holes through here to plug these coils in like this. The only issue with this is, first of all, we have to make some kind of bracket, and second, we still don't really have any way to strap the spark plug wires. So let me just go ahead and think about this a little bit and figure out what we're going to do, and we'll get back to it. Another thing we're working on today is the transmission cooler. Here's the cooler that I got. Whether or not it's big enough, I don't know. We'll have to check transmission temperatures once we get to doing some passes and stuff like that. Another part I got here from ICT Billet is the transmission adapters. So what we're going to be doing with those is they're going to replace these fittings right there and right there to allow us to adapt an AN line to the transmission. This transmission cooler already has AN fittings on both sides, so we're all good to go there. One of these ends is longer, and obviously one of them is shorter. You need to make sure, and I don't know if this is the same for the 4L60E, but on the 4L80E, you have to have this longer fitting. You can't just get some fitting to screw in here that doesn't have this, because this directs the oil to a specific spot that it just needs to be there. So we're going to be putting those in. We're going to be running some lines. So we got a couple different spots for a transmission cooler. Well, really we don't, honestly. The first spot that I was thinking about mounting the cooler was down here in this hole in the lower lip here. But unfortunately, we can't really do that because there's just so much going on here right now. As you can see, we got oil drain line. Well, I don't know. Maybe we can. Let's take it out of the package and see what it looks like there. I played around with mounting it up here in the front, and it's just not going to work. It's the right size. I mean, it could fit kind of here. I could also mount it in front of the radiator here, which I know is a pretty common practice, obviously, at least on stock vehicles. But number one, I don't want it here because I want to make sure that none of the air... I want to make sure we're getting the best cooling through our radiator and our intercooler, because the other thing is, obviously, we're going to have an intercooler here most likely. It does kind of fit here, but everything is just so jammed up that it's hard, because you got to remember we're going to have some intercooler piping here and stuff like that. So really not going to work there either. So my other option, and this is what I was going with from the beginning because it opens up the most possibilities, is we put it in the bed. So basically, transmission cooler on one side, fuel cell in the middle, battery on the other side. And I think that's what I'm going to go with. It's really not that much farther running it from the fittings on the transmission to the front versus the back. So that's what we're going to do. Basically for right now though, obviously because we don't have the bed on, I'm waiting on a couple more things to finish up everything underneath of the bed before we sit the bed back on. So for right now, what we're going to do is we're going to run the lines. Simultaneously, we're going to run some fuel lines, which I have right here. PTFE, E85 compatible, AN fittings, everything's good to go. This is 10 AN line, which is probably really big for my application, but I wanted to make sure that in the future I wasn't really going to have to redo a lot of stuff. So I got fuel lines big enough to handle our end goal, which is over 1,000 horsepower. So we got 10 AN lines for feed and return. They're obviously going to come up in the engine bay somewhere up here and connect to an intake manifold, which obviously also I'm still undecided about. And then the rear end, fuel cell is going to be somewhere in the bed. So we're going to have to go ahead and get those two back here. So basically we're going to run the transmission lines and the fuel lines underneath of the cab here, similar to what we did with the brake line, and get them all the way to back here. And then how they come through the bed and stuff like that, I'm not sure yet. So we're gonna, be checking that out. But I think if we bring out all 4 lines somewhere here, it'll be real easy to just kind of go right here because the bed actually mounts up here. So we got all this space here that we can go through. So I'm thinking about bringing all 4 lines out here, and then we can kind of just 90 them around here and maybe go up through the pan in this area and connect to a transmission cooler, have them run along the wall or something like that to go to the fuel cell. The fuel cell mounts will actually probably be under the cab, so they might not even come through. But that's where I'm at, and that's what we're going to go with. Obviously, with the fuel lines, we also need to have a fuel filter and a fuel pump back here somewhere, whether it's an in-tank or an external, I don't know yet. But that's where we're at, so I'm going to go ahead and run some lines. Voila! Now we have transmission and fuel lines. Got those fittings in up there. The rear one was the one that had the longer end on it, like I talked about earlier. So we got the AN lines coming there, and they go right out there. I had to cut that little section out there. That was obviously the easiest way to do it. I tried originally to snake them through here, but it was just too much weird bending going on, and I didn't like it. So we cut that piece out there. We are going to have a little bit of an issue maybe here because there actually needs to be another bar in right about here for the seat mount. And as you can see, these are pretty high, so I don't know what we're going to do about that. We might do a piece of bar and maybe connect them with a flat bar. I have some of that 1/4-inch steel. Or we might just go ahead and have this bar protrude through the floor pan. Or we might just go ahead and not put a passenger seat in right now until we get the roll cage put in. Because once we have the roll cage put in, then we can put the bar mounted to the roll cage, which is higher than the floor pan. So I got them secured here and here underneath, so you can still get to them. Everything up there is totally fine. I got the fuel line secured there to the fuel rail. Everything comes out back here, which is going to be way underneath the bed. The bed actually is up at this level, so it's going to be a good 3 or 4 inches underneath the bed, but obviously above the frame, so we're all good there. Fuel lines in the front come out right about there. I don't know what's going to happen with those yet because we obviously need to, I don't know exactly what intake I'm running yet or anything like that. So I went ahead and fixed the floor pan so it should fit back in here. So I'm going to go ahead and give that a shot. And there we have it. Nothing visible. I bent it a little bit just right now, but not a big deal. It gets welded in eventually. So I think what we're going to do is here, similar to the other side, we're going to box off all of this, and then I think we'll put a little access panel here, and same thing on the other side so that we can reach the transmission lines and the electric, you know, those plugs over there, and the shifter cable. That way, if we need to pull the transmission out, it's nice and easy. We don't have to crawl underneath of the truck for an endless amount of time. The only thing, obviously, we'd have to reach underneath is the transmission mount. It'll also probably be easier to have a little bit of access going on in here, too, just because of how this is all designed and everything like that. So The best case scenario, obviously, is if we pull the engine, we don't pull the transmission. That way we don't have to lose all of our fluid and everything like that. But that's something for a future video. I don't know. Or whenever it breaks, I guess. Then we'll figure out how to and what to pull when. So, but anyway, we're done with the transmission and fuel lines. What to work on now? It's a good question. Obviously, we can't put the cooler in yet because we need the bed on. Can't do the fuel lines yet because we need the bed on. I don't know. Let me think about it. So I did finally decide on a coil pack location, and boom, it's on the firewall. So I really wanted to mount it on that side. I tried so hard to make it work there, but it was just too much. Either it was just going to be weird running the lines, or there was nothing to support the cables. I would have had to make a special bracket. There wouldn't have been enough room for the wires to plug in. So it was just easier, and I think it looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and throw the intake on and ruin the look of this engine bay, but let's see what it looks like. And there we go, one ugly truck manifold. That thing just, ugh, it's so disgusting. I mean, I know it's got a cover on it when it's in the truck, but Jesus, compared to like the LS6, you know, intake manifold, or even the Trailblazer manifold, it's like the ugliest thing ever. But it is what it is. So here we go, coil's mounted. Now I can order spark plugs. I don't know what's next. Next random thing we're going to be working on is not that, those rear shocks. These are from Competition Engineering. They're drag racing shocks. They're three-way adjustable. They're relatively cheap. Compared to some of the nicer drag racing shocks, these are extremely affordable. You can't fully adjust everything, but they do have 3 different adjustment levels. Let's see here. It tells you somewhere on this box. Oh, there it is. So you can set them up, and they're based on the amount of pressure it takes to open and close the shock. You can set them up for 90-10, 820, or 640. These are rear shocks. They are set for a 30-70, a 40-60, or a 50-50. So you kind of got 3 levels of adjustment you can play with. They are drag racing shocks, so they probably won't do well on the street, but what they do is they help with the weight transfer and the load of the rear end when you leave the line. So we're going to go ahead and give those a shot and see how they work out. I'd really like to work on what's in this white box, but we're going to save that for another video. I'll give you a little hint, though. Ooh. Yay. So let's pop one of these bad boys out, and I'll give you the rundown. I already checked one of these out, so... Okay, Competition Engineering by Moroso, relatively cheap. So, just basic shock. They have 3 levels of adjustment, so what you do is you push this all the way in, and you spin it, and you can hear it clicking. And so there's your 3 levels. So the hardest click is the, I believe, the least firm, and then it goes firm and then extra firm. So we're probably going to put them in the middle for right now, just see how they go. Let's take one of these back here and see if the eyelet is going to fit where our old shocks went, because that is another concern of mine. And they don't. So we're going to have to figure that out. So they do fit over the threads on here, but obviously we need it to go farther in. So probably go ahead and mess with this guy, get this filed down so we can get these on here. Shocks are done. I had to modify a little bit, like I talked about. I ended up not modifying the truck. I actually just modified the bushing that goes in here. So these shocks came with a metal sleeve inside. If you take that metal sleeve out, this bolt was the same size, but unfortunately, getting that metal sleeve out was impossible. So what I did was I took the bushings out of the old shocks, I trimmed them down so they would fit in these eyelets, and then I used them. So there we go. You can see it looks like there's not a whole lot of travel, but what happens is when these shocks bottom out, the truck pretty much bottoms out. We only have about 2 inches of travel from where it sits before it hits the plates on the frame rail. So we're all good to go. And right now I have them set on the middle firmness. So definitely a lot stiffer. Not as bouncy. We'll have to see, obviously, when we first take it to the track. Maybe we'll try adjusting them and see how that goes. They should be pretty easy to adjust. We'll just jack the back up, take the bottom bolts out of the studs, you know, compress them all the way, turn them, blah, blah, blah. So it shouldn't be that bad. We have it on the middle setting right now, and we'll see how that goes. And, you know, maybe adjust them after we get some 60-foots in. We got a lot of random stuff done in this video. It was over the course of a couple days, so I'm having trouble remembering exactly what it was, but you saw the video, so you know how it goes. We're getting really close to being able to start this truck, drive this truck, and I'm getting super excited. I still have a driving goal of June 22nd, so it's probably not going to be race ready at that point, but it's going to be close enough to drive its ass out of here. So stay tuned. If you like the build, if you also cannot wait to see this thing drive, like, share, comment, subscribe. You know the deal. And I'll see you next time.